Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. I have an album called Hypothetical. Every month, you will hear me break down every element in the next track on the album until I've run out of tracks. There's 14 tracks, so we'll be doing this for over a year. The first track is Bit Depth. It was mixed by Mac Siegel and mastered by Kevin Lively. Bit Depth is the name of the podcast, you say. Very astute of you to notice. The most astute listener will also know right away that it's my podcast theme song. In March of 2016, I made the podcast theme. The podcast theme was always just that, a podcast theme. I wanted to make something that felt heartfelt, deep, and introspective. Here's the original. Lo-fi guitar with an unexpected twist. Literally 3 tracks, 2 guitars and a synth. Here's one guitar. Here's the other. Here's the synth. That synth is a Prism instrument by Native Instruments. I wanted the theme to end in an unexpected place, away from home, as though the conversation you're about to listen to on the podcast will answer the question of where we're going. In 2020, I updated the theme to this. The version on the album retains most of these elements except for the drums and vocals, so let's hear everything else first. We have our original guitars, doubled now. Newer, strummier guitars, more of them playing the arpeggiated pattern so we can hear that sweet, sweet melody. And another guitar playing the top melody. We have bass guitar, strings, here's the old drums, which are not real, and real shakers. The original synth is there, but there's other pads that are enhancing it, and they're playing the same part. We have these music boxes. One is playing the guitar melody, but the other is doing the story melody. And now here's both of the instruments that are playing the story melody. So I don't remember exactly, but I guess I had added the words to the theme and just hadn't recorded it yet. I'll get back to that, but first, let's get to know our friends Steven and Monomate. This is what I call the Steven ARP, or arpeggiator. The score for the show Steven Universe by Ivy and Sarashu is somewhat influential for me. If you've listened to some of my earlier music, you may know that I've dabbled in some chiptune style sounds. The Steven Universe score has a ton of chiptuney sounds in it, with a lot of delays on them. It's pretty common to hear in old school sound effects, like getting a coin in a video game. Here's a sound I just whipped up. So the core of the idea came from this Stevenism, but my Steven ARP is a little different. Unlike a normal delay, my Steven ARP slows down the arpeggiation over time, like it's falling into the ether. With this little quirk that makes it my own, I started putting that shit on everything. Listen for the Steven ARP in this clip of Peace for a Moment from my EP Soundbites. We'll be hearing from our friend Steven repeatedly throughout the course of these deep dives. And the other friend is Monomate. Monomate is like the password of the album. It's present on every song, somewhere. Listen for it. It's pretty audible on this one. Monomate is a little synth plugin from a developer called Tweakbench. They made a lot of chiptune style instruments and effects that were affordable when I was starting out making music, and their plugins have stayed in my toolbox the entire time that I've been producing music. Monomate is simple. It's a monophonic synth. It's a simple and loud oscillator with very few parameters. I just keep coming back to it. I love this little thing. So that's everything in the updated podcast theme. So what's different with the album version? Well, voice and drums, really. Here's Keegan Darrow's drums, which add so much more life than MIDI drums can. These were recorded at Cardinal Song in Oklahoma City. And vocals. So I had started performing this version of the song as a mini sound check at the start of my sets. It's only 50 seconds long, and I go from low to high in my voice, both in pitch and volume. So it gives the audio engineer a good idea of what they're dealing with. When I perform with my computer, I loop the layers of my voice. The track emulates that looper thing. So lyrics, it's a single line. Make your story worth telling.
Make your story worth telling.
Since this is my podcast theme, Bit Depth is all about getting to know people, who they are, what they do, why they do what they do, and the same with their beliefs that make them who they are. Make your story worth telling not only serves as a thesis for my podcast, it also serves as a sort of thesis for Hypothetical. As you will come to find, Hypothetical is all about story, whether fiction, nonfiction, something in between, and something beyond. One reason why I wrote a lot of fictional stories for my songs is because when I first started writing music, I felt like I didn't have much of a story to tell. I felt I didn't have enough experiences or failures or traumas that warranted telling my own story in songs. So I made things up. Wildly different characters, perspectives, and events that were things that I thought about but hadn't actually experienced myself. In a way, this fiction became my story. And over time, I felt more confident in telling my story. What I've come to find by doing my podcast and eventually having podcasting be my career is that everyone's story is worth telling. but we need the ability, the platform, the confidence to make our story worth telling. So it's a command to you, to myself. Paradoxically, what makes your story worth telling is telling your story. That's what BitDepth is here for. I should probably address that. I haven't put out an episode of BitDepth in years now. BitDepth has been asleep, not dead. In 2020, I started my LLC, and I eventually became a full-time freelancer in music and audio. Over time, producing other people's podcasts became the majority of my work. I'm extremely grateful for the ability to do this for a living, and I sometimes have to remind myself that the only reason I'm doing this is because of this podcast. However, because most of my time is spent producing other people's podcasts, my podcast had to take a back seat. Unfortunately, BitDepth started to feel like work. I'm very passionate about BitDepth. I recognized what it felt like to try to force an episode to happen every week, which resulted in some episodes, let's say, lacking intention. I want BitDepth to be what it is and not force it to happen, not turn it into something that I'm not proud of, or have it turn into a chore. So if you're listening and you want BitDepth to keep going, or if you want to be a guest, or know someone that would be a good guest, let me know. I would love to keep it going. All right, enough of that. Back to the music. Finally, at the end of the song, we hear some distortion building up. When I was at ACM at UCO, I took a sound design class with Rob Derrick. Great class, great teacher. For one assignment, we walked around the school with contact microphones and recorded a random assortment of sounds. These sounds, along with the ending sounds in Star Destroyer, are a heavily manipulated amalgamation of an elevator, a microwave, and some other things, I think. It's been a long time. I don't actually remember how I got to this sound specifically. Anyways, it's all a build-up to Star Destroyer, the next song on the album, which we'll talk about next month. All right, so you've now heard every single aspect of this intro track. Let's listen to the whole thing. Thank you for listening to BitDepth. You can listen to Hypothetical wherever you stream music, or preferably, you can buy Hypothetical on Bandcamp, where I will receive much more money from you than I will if you streamed it for an entire year. Love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong.